I want to tell you a little bit about why the value that pharma drugs generate and their ability to fund future innovation is important to me. My friend Yvonne is one of the most extraordinary people I know. She is somebody who's completely committed to making a difference for people in all that she does. She also has renal cell carcinoma, or RCC. But Yvonne has lived years longer than expected. Why? Because Yvonne is one of these people that just does all of the things. She does what her oncologist recommends, she doesn't drink, she does the diet, she does the exercise, all of it. She's somebody who really inspires me in the work that I do to bring new drugs to market. Yvonne has also exhausted all the existing treatment options to treat her RCC, and she recently was undergoing screening to participate in a clinical trial for one of the new, very effective immunotherapies. She found out along the way that she has hepatitis C, which she'd have to treat first before she could take advantage of the immunotherapies. Luckily for Yvonne, we're in a year where there's a bunch of new, very effective hepatitis C therapies being launched onto the market. They've been getting a lot of attention in the media, not because it's one of the first times or few times that a pill is actually a cure, but because of their high price. So what goes into pricing a new drug in pharmaceuticals? Well, you have to consider the number of patients who will be treated. You have to consider the length of therapy. You have to consider whether or not insurance will cover it, and a number of other factors as well. You also have to ask, who's the patient? It's a complicated question here, because the physician may make a decision to prescribe a drug, but the insurance company has to cover it, the patient has to accept it, and along the way there are experts and guidelines and other folks that also weigh in on whether or not a product gets used. In the case of hepatitis C, insurance companies have had a very big voice in what gets used this year. Because of competition, there's some very large insurance companies that have decided to only cover one option, thus taking the choice out of the hands of the physician and the patient. You also have to consider where the drug is being administered. If it's being administered in a hospital or a clinic, there are economic concerns on that side, profitability. If it's being administered in the pharmacy, then the insurance company and patient out of pocket bears more weight. And there are price restrictions in some countries. In the United States, we don't put price restrictions on what you can price a drug, but in many countries they do. So that means we pay a higher price here, and we bear more of the weight when it comes to funding future innovation. An example of this is that in the United Kingdom, they have what's called a quality adjusted life year, and their threshold for that is £32,000. So they say one life year is worth £32,000. So while I'm talking a lot about the sticker price of drugs and where that comes into things, I think it's important to consider where drugs fit into the overall picture of healthcare costs. In the United States, they're only actually 10 to 12% of the overall healthcare spend. So just a small piece of the pie, actually. However, I keep saying that it's important that we charge for them, that we charge a certain price. It's important that we fund future innovation. So why don't we look at a little bit of the nitty-gritty there on why I keep saying that. So a Tufts University analysis that came out this year showed that the top 50 biopharma companies over the last, I think, about 10 years put about 1,400 molecules into phase 1 clinical trials. Of that, about 12% came out to actually be a marketed drug on the market. That's a 1 in 8. So it's a really expensive process. If you consider all the failures that happen there, the cost to get any one drug to market is $2.6 billion. Needless to say, investors in the pharma industry are very interested in driving down the costs of development and research as much as they can. And one of the ways that you see this showing up these days is leaning on biotech to do some of the early stage of things. And you can see that in the amount of M&A activity that there is out in the biopharma industry. It's worth bearing in mind here the amount of time that you actually have to make back that investment. Because a patent is filed when the drug or when the compound is discovered, by the time it actually gets through trials and onto the market, you maybe only have about 7 years to make back the investment. So while a lot of times you and I may look at a pill in our hand and say to ourselves, well, this pill could have only cost pennies on the dollar to manufacture. Why do I have to pay so much for it? I hope that what I've shown you today is that manufacturing costs, for example, are only a small sliver of the pie. I hope that I've also given you a sense of the kind of complexities and issues that go into pricing drugs in the pharmaceutical industry and how that works. You know, I think at the backbone of all of this, we have to ask ourselves, what is the value they provide to patients? And that, to me, is the most important question that I ask myself on a day-to-day basis. When I talk to my friend Yvonne, and she talks about the new immunotherapies and the new hepatitis C therapies that she's now getting to take advantage of, she calls them miracles. Thank you.